And so it's Wednesday morning here on Radio Veritas 576 AM. And yeah, this beautiful Wednesday, the feast of Saints Raphael, Michael, and of course the archangels. So that's the feast day we celebrate today. And we're also celebrating another Catholic. This is Refilwe Nkabinde, who's now been appointed financial director at Vodacom. Hello, Refilwe.
Hello, Khanya. Good to chat to you. It's been so long, man.
It's been so long, hey? And we are also excited. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So tell me, how did it come to you? How did the news come to you that you have been appointed? Obviously, you would have applied. You've had that there's a position, and then and then it came to you that you have been appointed.
Yeah, look, it was something that I was really looking forward to. It's kind of it came at the right time in terms of my own career journey. I'm very particular in terms of how I choose my careers, companies I work for, and why, and what my purpose is in that. So with the appointment at Vodacom, of course, after the process, quite a stressful process, I must add. When the news came, I was super, super excited. Of course, just like with anything, one prays about these things, right? And even through the interview, you actually pray that, let it be the Holy Spirit that guides the conversation rather than your own doing and your own knowledge. So, when my prayers were answered, it was just fantastic. I resumed the role on the 1st of November. So I'm still in what we call handover, but it's also an exciting handover as well. So learning a lot.
Nice. And of course, I mean, you started with finance back in the parish and so on, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And we'll talk about, this role and your typical day and so on, what you see it as. But let's talk about Refilwe as, a young woman growing up in Pimville and being a Catholic.
Yeah. So actually, Khanya, many years ago, a woman doesn't quite tell her age. So many years ago, I always say I'm 35, by the way, but in my case, it's 35 plus VAT, and we'll leave it at that. I was born in, the hospital was still called Baragwanath Hospital. So you can imagine how many years ago that was. But I'm actually from Diepkloof. So I was born, my parents lived in Diepkloof before we moved to Pimville. So I was baptized, Go St. Margaret's, by the now Bishop Risi. He was the priest then, Go Diepkloof. And then I think I must have been about 18 months old or so. We moved to Pimville, and I attended St. Peter Claver, which is really where I grew up, and I regard that as my home parish. And I mean, it was back in the days, Zabo, Father Boys, really long time ago. And yeah, to your earlier point, being Go St. Peter, I ended up, being part of the PPC at some stage. I was leading the young adults. I also was serving as a member of the parish finance committee under the leadership of Tandile Sala. So really exciting times and memories at the Pimville Church. And of course, I cannot forget the music. The musical times we had there. I remember I was on the guitar, Khanya, you were on the organ. We had Linda, Mandla on the violin and the brass instruments. So really had fun. And really started, finding who I was and what I loved. And more importantly, what energizes me. And of course, learning a lot about my faith as well, which was critical.
Critical indeed. And of course, we'll also talk about that, how that has grounded you now, so that's your youth growing up in Pimville and then, getting to be in the PPC. but before that, you've always loved commercial stuff. You've always loved money, finance, and so on. How did that come about?
Well, Khanya, actually, I'm the only girl at home, as you know. I'm well cushioned, and I always say I'm well cushioned by my two brothers. So I've got an elder brother, Tamaha, and a younger brother, Labuchang. And therefore, being the only girl at home, I was, responsible for a few things, including taking care of the money that we, the three of us, would ask from for my dad and my mom. I remember I remember a time when we wanted to buy a TV game. And we had to save up money, and I was responsible for that as a young child. I think I must have been in standard 5. Yeah, I think we call it grade 7 now. But yeah, so I've always been, that one who was responsible for pulling money together, seeing how we spend it, which video games we buy and why, etc., etc. So I think my love for money and money management, rather, started there. And of course, then in terms of choosing my career choices and where to go, when I was at Mondio High, we had a subject then called career guidance. And the lecturers or the teachers took us through, different types of careers. And what really appealed to me was a career in kind of exploring being a chartered accountant. So I'm a qualified chartered accountant with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. And of course, that gave me a proper grounding in terms of what I do today, which I'd like to call myself, yes, the title is like a finance director, but really as a finance director, you really, you're becoming the co-pilot to the pilot who's the MD or the CEO. And your role, or I see my role really as, informing decisions and direction around strategy in terms of where the business should go and how we deal with challenges that everyone faces in the marketplace from a financial perspective in terms of a lens that you look through, but you cover across the entire business.
Beautiful. And so I think what you're really saying is that it's amazing that you can be so versatile, be a guitarist, a saxophonist as well, and still be able to follow a career that's non-related to any of this as well, but also nurtured by the way you grew up, inspired by, you being a girl among the boys and you being the manager somehow of the monies from that age, yes.
Yeah, no, definitely, Khanya. And the one thing that kind of stands out in terms of how we grew up at home is, given that I was the only girl at home, my parents never created those boundaries that say, which I found quite unhelpful, by the way, the boundaries that say girls must cook and boys must do the garden and those kind of things. Growing up at home, we did everything. I mean, I couldn't buy a car until my dad taught me how to change a tire, which others might see as something that's typically done by boys. So growing up, I never had these boundaries that said girls do specific careers and girls do specific careers. Now, how that shows up in my adult life and how I show up is, I can be whoever I want to be. And I don't feel like, I need to, crack through any boundaries because the boundaries just simply don't exist. So also being a mother to 4 kids, I've got 2 girls and 2 boys. That's also the lessons that I learned at home that I'm instilling at home as well. So within my kids, I allow my kids the freedom to do whatever they want to do, because I'm also trying to break the boundaries that say girls do specific things and boys do specific things. The reality of it, Khanya, is that if you feel that this is something for you, you pray about it and the Holy Spirit will guide you in terms of you getting there, and you make the best of it. Once God answers your prayers, you say thank you and you make the best of it.
And of course, that instilling something in your children also comes from your the way your dad also taught you the music a part of things come from him. He was a conductor in church, but also a very grounded man in terms of his faith as well.
Correct. So it's both my parents. So not many people know this, but my parents met at a choir competition. My mother was singing the soprano solo, and my dad was singing the tenor solo. So and yeah, I guess as they say, the rest is history. And here we are, 3 kids later, etc., etc. So yes, so the musical grounding comes from both of them, which is quite inspiring. It's an inspiring story, really. And when I turned a tender age of 40, I decided to start something new. And that's when I picked up the saxophone. Because just in terms of just keeping fresh and learning different things, I picked up an alto sax. What was also helpful is that my kids also play instruments. So my eldest son, Zanobushe, plays the guitar very, very well. And therefore, just giving him the space to own that, I decided to pick up a different instrument. And yes, I've been learning how to play the alto sax, and sometimes I mess around with it here and there. But it does give me, just a different getaway, because when work is hectic, you just need an exit point in terms of where you can just don't think about work and do something different, just to keep yourself sane, and in the spirit of this whole wellness. I think it does me a lot of good.
Beautiful. And now, in terms of your faith, then all these, how do you bring this into the faith, or how has this helped you, in instilling the faith to your children as well?
Yeah, so Khanya, so the faith remains a core part of what we do. And of course, I think I've been blessed in, growing in a family like what I had at home, where both my dad was born a Catholic, my mom was born Lutheran, but then through marriage, she converted to becoming a Catholic. And therefore, all of us then were born kind of Catholic, and that's just how it's been. So my view in terms of faith and faith moving forward is it's really the core of everything that I do. So it grounds me, it just centers all my decisions. Whenever I feel like, and in life we have these ups and downs, but whenever I feel like I've got a challenge that I'm facing either at work or even at home, most of the time I go to church and I go to mass and pray about it. Sometimes I don't even know what to say because I'm still trying to figure it out. And that's also okay, because I actually do find comfort in just sitting in church and just meditating and thinking through it. With my kids, we do the normal, Catholic home type of upbringing with the kids. And they too have come to know that, it is through God that, we are blessed with everything that we are blessed with. And when there are challenges, they know who to turn to. It's not like mom and dad have got the answers to everything. We certainly don't. We're also on a journey, but they do know who to turn to, when they face certain challenges. What was also interesting at home with the kids is when they got baptized, they all got given saint names. And now they're going through a process of learning about their saint names, which is an interesting time at home. We're having to get books and just educate them about these fantastic saints that we have, which is quite an interesting time at home. So that's what we're going through at the moment.
And of course, in the process, you're also learning about these saints.
Which is why I had to get the books, right?
Beautiful. And now your role then, what do you see it, or how do you see it, or what have you been told about being a financial director, and what your typical day would be like, especially, juggling that with family as a mother of 4?
Yeah, so luckily this is not the first directorship role that I'm occupying. Of course, it's much bigger than the others that I have occupied. So a typical day as a finance director is not the same every day. There's specific times in the month where you've got some kind of routine, but most of the, and that's about 20% of your time. Most of the time, you deal with different things. And what excites me about being in finance is that you can be strategic and operational at the same time. So in a typical day, I could be partnering with Impact, with the MD of the business, when we're trying to figure out strategically where should the business go. And that's really, really high and strategic. At the same time, I could be doing something very, very operational in terms of just getting the bare basics done. And how I like to think about it, and how I explain it to others, is that, finance is one of those roles where you can have your head in the sky and thinking strategic and long term, but you also have to have your feet solidly grounded on the ground. So head in the sky, feet firmly on the ground, and you just have this ability to stretch yourself in your thinking, in your execution. So every day is very different, Khanya, and it brings different challenges all the time. The critical thing and the critical key delivery for me is how we win share in the market, because I'm quite competitive. I've got a background in sports as well, so I like to play, and I like to play to win. So very clear that the competition is outside, not internal, and therefore what we do is really around how we win share in the market, but also being really honored about being able to bring connectivity and connectivity solutions to consumers. The one thing COVID has shown me is that there's a huge digital divide in society, which was quite sad to witness, actually, especially when we were going through the level 5s, when we were having challenges as a country around, kids being able to be educated at school and those kind of things. And that's when it became quite apparent just how big this divide is. And I'm a firm believer that through connectivity and digital inclusion, we can try and narrow this gap, just so that we can almost democratize education across everyone, because it's such a key ingredient in terms of, the future of the young ones. So yeah, part of what I think I'm being called to do and to deliver is just to see what role I play in driving this thing that I call digital inclusion.
And yes, that's one thing that we've had to all learn, working digitally and so on. And as you say, with COVID, you got to see how some people are disadvantaged and others are, had to sort of learn to then use technology and so on, because they had access to it and so on. Now, you mentioned something earlier about being competitive and going into sports and so on, but that's not the only thing. Of course, you used to play soccer. I don't know if you still do. And you also into fitness and so on. And you dabbled in radio as well. So this is where I now become very biased, because you're a presenter on Radio Veritas, presenting a musical choral music show with us. Now I'm interested in how all that has helped, somehow in your career path or somewhere in life.
I think as the one thing that's probably common in this conversation is just how I like to get involved in many different things. And I think that goes with who I am and my personality, but more importantly, it energizes me. So I've had to learn that I do get bored pretty quickly. It's called self-awareness. So I know that I get bored very quickly, and therefore to keep myself engaged and interested, I need to get involved in multiple different things. So the show that I presented with you, Khanya, was called Yalla Meropa, which was very, very interesting. It was a very interesting time in my life as well. I mean, I was still in varsity, and I was still studying, not yet married. So there was a lot of time. And therefore it was just interesting, to work at the studio, work with the awesome team, work with Father Emil, and everyone else. So that brought a different element into my growth and my journey, which was great. I started playing soccer when I was at Wits, of course, being cushioned by these brothers that I refer to. And back to the whole history on growing up around, we could all do whatever we wanted to do. When the boys would play what we called back then one bala, I don't know what that is in English, all of us would get involved, and I'd even get involved as well. So they taught me a few tricks with the ball. And of course, when I got to Wits, I played for Wits University, and I got all the way up to regionals, which was great. So I played for Gauteng. And yeah, so that was a very interesting time. After varsity, of course, I played in the corporate league. But now it's a bit difficult to juggle with everything that I'm doing, but fitness remains a key element because it just helps with wellness and how one manages their energy and how one shows up, etc. And it's just a good way to just live life, just to be healthy and those kind of things. So I've moved into boxing now, Khanya. I do boxing, but I don't fight. It's boxing with a trainer, and they have their pads up, and you literally just punch the pads. I'm finding that quite it's quite a workout actually. It's after I've had my boxing sessions, I do feel pretty strong. It makes you feel like you can take over the world, which is great. And I just do overall fitness and wellness. It's also something that I'm trying to instill within the kids as well, just so that we can just move. Sometimes we walk, sometimes we run, sometimes we ride bicycles. What's important is just to move and get the blood flowing and all of those kind of things, because it's so good for the body and the brain as well. So it's something that I'm very, very deliberate and intentional about.
And of course, we're speaking to Refilwe Nkabinde, the new finance director at Vodacom from the 1st of November. And you're still listening to Matins with me, Khanya Litabe. And Refilwe, you've really given us a mouthful. Now, here's a question. When Refilwe Nkabinde is long gone from this earth, how would she like to be remembered?
Wow, Khanya, that's an interesting question. I'd like to really be remembered as someone who made a difference. I'd like to be remembered as someone who left the place in a better space than what she had found it as. And really just, leaving a good legacy and something for others to learn from and take forward and use. So I'd like to really leave a positive impact. That's really how I'd like to be remembered. I wouldn't like to be remembered as that lady that managed the funds. I think that would be boring. Rather someone that brought, a positive impact in someone else's life. I've gone through a process, Khanya, where I've gone to understand or try and understand what my purpose is. And I've actually been able to articulate it in a sentence. And really my purpose is, quite simply put, is to be the best that I can be by growing myself and others, which simply means, I feel good when I know that I've given off my best. I acknowledge that I'm on a journey, and therefore every day is a learning experience. I'm a firm believer that today will be much better than yesterday, and so tomorrow will be much better than today. And through that, that's how I force myself to grow. And I'm also, quite vested in others growing along with me. So I don't want to grow by myself. I'd like to take others on a journey with me. Of course, it requires the other person to be willing to embark on the journey. But as far as that goes, I'm very passionate about mentoring young girls. I'm very passionate about marriage and the sacrament of marriage. And therefore, I enjoy inspiring and talking to other people about, the gift of marriage. And also just motivating people to surprise themselves in terms of what more they can do. When I do those kind of things, I find that, I feel quite fulfilled.
Surprise themselves. Would you say you were surprised that you are where you are today?
I think I was more blessed than surprised, actually, because I have prayed about it, in all honesty, as I think through my journey and I think about, the impact I'd like to leave and how I'd like to show up, etc. This is certainly part of the journey. I've even thought about my next move. And what I'd like to do after this role, which I can't yet talk about because God is still putting it together for me. But I have thought about it, and I've just left it with God to figure out and sort out.
Wow! So you have those conversations with Him, and
Yes.
you say, "I have this plan. Let's discuss how I can make it work." Just like you discuss strategy at work.
That's how it goes.
And Refilwe, you so many layers in terms of the Catholic Church, St. Peter Claver, St. Hubert in Alexandra. Is it Rivonia Parish as well, Our Lady of Lourdes?
Yes, I'm at Rivonia now.
Yes. So, all these people then might say, oh, we know her and so on. What would be your final message, thinking about these people that I've mentioned in mind as well?
My final message, and thanks for that, Khanya. My final message is really to, the young people in Soweto, in Alex, that, are wondering, how does this happen? How does it happen for a young girl that was born in Diepkloof, the same dusty roads that everyone lives in? How does it happen that she could, be appointed to be a finance director of a successful business like Vodacom? I'd like to say to you, who's maybe reflecting on that it's possible. Yeah, it's really possible, and I'd like you to use my story as inspiration, to allow yourself to dream big. With knowing that, anything is possible through God. All you have to do is pray about it. You leave it on God's inbox. He's also got an inbox. You leave it for him to deal, and he will make it happen at his right time. It may not be at the time that you expect it to happen, but when it happens, it would be at the right time because he would have made it happen at that time. So it's really just a message of encouragement, to let you know that, you can dream big. Don't be scared to dream big. The one thing that I've realized early on in my career is that if I don't ask for stuff, the answer will always be no, because you haven't asked for it. Whereas if you can ask for it, who knows? The answer might be yes. So, continue, building yourself up. Be very deliberate about who you want to be, why you want to be, where you want to go, and why that's important to you. And when difficulties come, because they do come, when difficulties come, make sure that your why is big enough to get you to make you, continue to be vested in your dream. And yeah, Khanya, thanks for the conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm hoping that, my story could be an inspiration, to someone that's probably thinking about their own future and wondering if it's possible.
And I'm sure you've answered me this question in all this conversation, in at least in the whole conversation that we've had. Smart work or hard work?
Both. Both. And the reason I say both is sometimes, you know, it depends where I am in my life. It's like the question I get around, do I believe in work-life balance? And my simple answer is that I don't think it exists. If it does exist, please inbox me and tell me how that works. What's worked for me is what I call, you know, harmony, work-life harmony, as opposed to balance. And that's why I'm saying these things, Khanya, can coexist. What I do mean about harmony is that, you know, there'll be times when my work requires about 80% of my time, and that simply means family gets 20%. And there's also times when, you know, my family requires more of me than what my work does, and therefore my family will get 80% of my time and work will get 20% of my time. And it's just how I'm able to flex those two things in a way that makes it work, as opposed to just forcing this 50-50 matrix, which I found, you know, hasn't quite worked for me. I do make sure that the games, the rugby games, my son says, Mom, I'm playing against this team and it would be great for you to be there. I make sure that I attend those games because they are important to him. But generally, I work through what I call work-life harmony as opposed to work-life balance.
Refilwe Nkabinde, been great speaking to you. And once again, congratulations in this role. And yes, so now Vodacom customers will know who's responsible for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Khanya. Thanks for the conversation. I really, really enjoyed it.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.